2022. Katie, please collect the roll.
Mrs. Melius? Here. Mr. Ewing?
Present.
Mr. Hoffman?
Here.
Mr. Updike?
Here.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Here.
And Mr. Anderson?
Here. Very good. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very good. Thank you, everyone, for being here this evening. Thank you, board members, for being here. Let's move on to the approval of the agenda.
So move.
Second. Moved and seconded for approval of the agenda. Any final corrections or comments? Katie, please collect the vote.
Mr. Ewing?
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Updike?
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
And Mrs. Melius? Yes, approved.
Very good. Thank you. Moving on to our first discussion item is Student Superintendent Advisory Council. Dr. Burke.
Yeah, we've got a couple of our, these are actually a couple of eighth graders that have come tonight to share some information. We've got Hadley Booz, who is from Spring Hill Middle School, and Eli Sprague, who is from Woodland Spring. And so I will turn it over to them. Remember, you've got two eighth graders that are coming publicly to speak in front of the board. That's pretty amazing in itself. So.
Hello. Okay, it's on. We're here to talk about our Student Advisory Council. Today, we're talking about our lunches and keeping up our sportsmanship in our schools. And I'm going to talk about sportsmanship. She's going to talk about lunches. And I'm saying that our sportsmanship needs to be keeping up as we're growing, because it's harder as more people come to our district. It's harder to keep everybody like on the same page on because our sportsmanship level is really high and we want to keep it there. We don't want it to fall off the grid. We want to stay as high as we can. We just need like to communicate that we need a better sportsmanship and we need to keep it at the high level that we have it. You got it?
So with the Olathe School District, we've talked about how their sportsmanship has been very terrible recently. And from knowing our Spring Hill kids, especially in the high school, has been very good with sportsmanship levels. Like our sportsmanship is one of the top compared to all of the other larger schools. I'm gonna switch gears here to school lunches. So previously, in the past month or two, the eighth graders have been allowed to have Minsky's on Tuesdays, every other Tuesdays. Woodland Spring and Spring Hill switch every once in a while. And we've had a larger variety of foods, especially for side options. So we've had some new options such as chicken and waffles. A lot of people have had that, especially on Minsky's days, even though Minsky's is very popular. Chicken and waffles is another, I don't know how to put it, like another option. And we've had more shipments come in. I can tell when we have more shipments in because there's a lot more options for like sides, like Dippin' Dots have been very hot recently. Ice cream. I know the Izzy's or like the sparkling water drinks have been really like hopping recently. The chips and all the others have been very top notch with getting taken out, like in a good way. But yeah, our school lunches have definitely improved since, say, the beginning of the year, since the drivers have been short and students have been happier about it.
Very good. Well done, by the way. You did fantastic. Good job. When you're talking about lunches with your other students, how do you approach that conversation? Because I think generally there's people have an idea of what they think about lunches, and how do you listen and not try to defend your position?
So I'm very open with my thoughts. I always, when I pass sixth graders or seventh graders or any grade levels, Especially in Stuco, I'll be very talkative in Stuco and always talk about like, hey, what's your favorite school lunch? And I'll just send out like a random survey, Google form, of course, best friend of mine, for all of the information I gather with the school lunches. That's how I got most of the surveys for favorite school lunches. Specifically, Bosco stick is like everybody's favorite, even though it's so basic. But that's been a top notch for school lunches. And I mainly gather information like, what's your favorite school lunch? What's your least favorite school lunch? Like the information we need to know, so I can send it on to Dr. Burke and we can send it along to the nutritional services.
Very good.
So just to clarify a couple things. First of all, I think it's amazing that eighth graders, because we originally set it up that they were supposed to come with upperclassmen, and somehow these two volunteered at the same night. So congratulations to you. That kudos to you. I don't know if in eighth grade I could have done that. Why is food such a big deal? They're teenagers. They're hungry. And so one of the things with the superintendent or the Student Superintendent Advisory Council is we talked about, come talk to us about the things that you're concerned with. And so food's a big deal. I think they can share that things have changed a lot because they came to us and said, hey, we have ideas and there's things that we want and or why can't we do some things? So we spent a lot of time talking about that. And I think they can share that Mrs. Dalton's been to a couple meetings and has been very receptive to changes, but food's a big deal. And I can tell you that they've been really receptive. One of the things that Eli was talking about is sportsmanship, because board member at the last meeting asked about sportsmanship and what their thoughts are. And I can tell you, our kids are, first of all, second to none, that the behavior of our kids at games is just amazing. And other schools and other kids act in certain ways and they don't understand why we don't just let them act that way. And so we had a great conversation about that and our expectations. I know that the other thing that they're going to talk about is classes that they'd like to take and some other things. They're also going to bring at the next meeting some of the plans and ideas about how they get out. It's hard for eighth graders to get out with the sixth and seventh graders because they don't have the same lunch times. You've got to do things on passing period. So these two do a great job of being able to get out, get among their peers. And I can tell you, especially Hadley, because she brings list of things at our meetings, and which is exactly what we've asked her to do. So I certainly appreciate that. But we're gonna, do you have any more questions or thoughts to share with these two? They've done a great job. Nope, we're good.
Well
Thank you.
done. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Mhm. Moving on to recognitions, Dr. Burke.
Yeah, we're gonna start with Rod Sprague. I'll shut up and just turn it over to him.
Okay, so green was good. So I have a big recognition to make tonight. And first I want to just introduce a family that's here with us. And it's a great thing that they're here. Max Kochaber and his family are here with us tonight. And we're so excited that they're here. And so we want to share just a little bit of some things that happened. On Valentine's Day, Max experienced a pretty traumatic situation. And he actually went into a cardiac arrest during PE. And I'd like for our Woodland Spring crisis team to come on up. And we want to recognize them, and our first responders too can come up here and join us too as we're here. When it first happened, our team sprung into action. Mr. Pipkin, or Coach Pipkin, who can't be here tonight, wanted to be, but he couldn't be here tonight. They sprung into action and began to put in our crisis plan into effect. And I want to recognize these people, because from Billy Pinkham being on the call with 911, standing right there with with Max and the team, communicating information back and forth and making sure everybody knew what to do. She was very instrumental in that. Amy Wells, running, grabbing the AED machine, helping us out with just communication between the building, doing things like that. Mr. Harwood jumping in and just supporting the team wherever he could, helping with Max. And then most importantly, I want to recognize Jeannie Brumley and Sheldon Pipkin. They jumped in and began doing CPR, chest compressions, connecting the AED machine and moving forward with that. So let's just give them a big round of applause. We're so proud of them. As a principal, I can say this is a situation that I never hoped to ever be in. And I couldn't imagine a better team to have take over this situation. And they did a phenomenal job. So we also have our first responders here tonight. And so I'm going to turn it over to them. They wanted to do a little presentation as well.
Thank you. My name is Bob Rankin. I'm a battalion chief of operations for Johnson County Med-Act. We're the ambulance service for Johnson County. On behalf of myself, Executive Director Paul Davis, I'd like to thank you for letting us come down here to do this tonight. It's important to recognize when people do amazing things. And what happened on February 14th was an amazing group effort to have a very positive outcome. In Johnson County, we run several hundred cardiac arrests every year. The outcomes aren't always the best, but we are above the national average in saves as a county. That incorporates the ALS ambulance service and the fire departments and all of their providers working together towards that. But the ones that we have the most success in involve the citizens of the county. The ones who call 911 early, the ones who get the AED, who start CPR. Without those things, our efforts don't happen right away. And 5 to 10 minutes can pass before positive intervention occurs, and then the outcome isn't what we want it to be. So tonight, we would like to recognize what we learned that day from everybody that was involved. So Sheldon Tipton for CPR. He wasn't able to be here. Okay. Jeannie Brumley with the AED. Chief Davis has something for you. We're going to give them a certificate and a lifesaver coin, which we hand out to people who do exactly what these folks did. Zach Harwood, who was in charge of logistics and general assistance during the call. Amy Wells, who was family communication. That's extremely important in these types of situations. Jolene Rutledge, who made sure that all of the EMS and fire crews had access to the school when we arrived. Billy Pinkham, communication with 911 and relaying those instructions to staff. That's the most important part, getting everybody coming, calling 911 and get it going. And lastly, through the conversations that we had preparing for tonight, we want to recognize Principal Rod Sprague, who's organized and coordinated training with his staff so that they knew what to do when this situation occurred. And so if you please join me in giving these people the recognition they so appreciate.
And I think they want to take a picture with everyone.
Yeah, I think
So-
it's a selfie.
Okay, very good.
She wants to make a heart. Thank you, guys.
So thank you very much.
Thank you, Rod. What an amazing outcome.
Yeah, this is one of those things that years ago, the board made a commitment to put an AED in every building in the district. And so this is one of those times we We always hope we never need them, but it was a time that we need them and it was available and the staff knew what to do in training. So luckily had a very positive outcome. So thank you to everybody. Yeah, I'd hate to follow that, but we're going to turn it over to Mr. Williams, Spring Hill High School.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, that's simply incredible. So last time I visited in front of you guys, I gave you let you know that we had 9 girls qualify for the girls state wrestling tournament. 2 out of those 9 placed. Izzy Ferris finished in 5th place and Juliana Yoder came in 6th place. We did have 11 boys qualify for state wrestling. We did not have any placers, but they did get to qualify for state, which is amazing. We had 3 students represent Spring Hill High School that were auditioned and selected for the KMEA All-State Band, which was down in Wichita. This is a big recognition for music people. Chase Bond, Sam Ausler, and Emily Wilcox got to perform down in Wichita with the All-State Band. And last but not least, our girls did qualify for the state basketball tournament. I believe the first time since 2003, 3, yes. And so we will be at Emporia at 2:00 on Thursday against St. Thomas Aquinas. So that's who we get to play in our first round match. So thank you.
Rod Spring, Woodland Spring Middle School.
That's okay, Dr. Burke. I've done that plenty of times myself too. Couple things that I want to recognize. I want to recognize Paul Carter and Megan Weaver for their work that they did with our Stallion Theater group this year. If you had an opportunity to come to our play, I know that Dr. Burke and Mr. Wilson had an opportunity to come watch our students perform. They did a phenomenal job. What they accomplished in 8 weeks, they did it under the big top, and it's a fun play. It's perfect for middle school. But the skills they got to work on, they worked on their public speaking skills and their projecting skills in front of the audience. And the funny thing is, I watched the show 3 out of the 4 times, and every show got better and better and better as they went. So I was really proud of that group for what they did. I also want to recognize our track coaches. They're starting our track season. Today, I was blown away. 120 kids in our hallways and in our gym running. Usually we don't tell kids to run in we tell them not to run in the hallways, but man, they sure were flying today. So it was a lot of fun watching that going on. And then that, and just one thing I want to recognize is our strategic planning team. I had the opportunity this weekend, I was working on some stuff and just going back through and reflecting on what we've done in the past year is phenomenal. So that team has done a lot of work in the area of academic excellence, but also in our area of personal development. The leadership groups that we had, Eli's part of that group that worked this year. And if you would have asked me in August if he would ever stand at a board meeting and speak in front of public like this, and on YouTube in front of thousands of people, I think he would have been like really scared, but he did it with confidence. And that's because they've had multiple opportunities this year. We just did our 6th grade enrollment night, and we had a full house. And our 8th grade Stallion squad was there working with those 6th graders. And it was fun listening to the conversations that the 8th graders were having with them, talking to them about what life in middle school is like and how to be successful in middle school. I heard a lot of conversations about if you do these things, if you prepare, if you do your homework, you're going to be just fine. And that encouragement that they were giving, those are the things that we wanted to see happen with our personal development goals. So very proud of the work that our team has done, and I'm looking forward to the next 5 years and seeing how that plan continues to build and grow and the positive benefits we see for all of our students. Thank you.
Trevor Gertson, Spring Hill Middle School.
Yeah, sorry here up on Zoom. I want to recognize, we just started a couple weeks ago, something new. We call it our Fuel Lunchtime Program. This is something where we are welcoming in trained family members and trained parents and adults into our lunches at the middle school as a way to connect, build relationships, and be a positive influence to our students. I had my 2nd round of training tonight and had a great turnout. And then today was the first time we actually had parents in the building. The way I do it is I have 2 parents, if they sign up, or 2 guardians come be a part of the school lunch. We had our first 2 today, and it was so encouraging to see the joy they had in interacting with the kids, walking and being a part of the school lunches. So grateful for the huge support just overall that I've had from the Spring Hill Middle School community and welcoming being a part of our Fuel Lunch program.
Also, he didn't bring it up, but we did get to see a viewing of 10 Ways to Survive the Zombie Apocalypse. And they, just like Woodland Spring, did a phenomenal job. So those kids should be applauded as well. So Dayton Creek, Darcy Sly.
Good evening. Tonight, I'd like to recognize my computer lab paraprofessional, Amber Lang. She does an amazing job. She comes up with the most exciting programs and activities for the kids to do to learn the different programming skills that they need at the elementary level in the computer lab. We are losing her. She did resign. She has another job, but I wanted to recognize her because she has worked so hard, and everything that she has worked on, she is planning to leave behind for the next person. So I really appreciate that. I also want to recognize the other paras in my building. They work so hard every single day with the kids. And I don't think the public really realizes how much work our paraprofessionals put in every single day. In fact, there are days like today that I think I even forget sometimes until I jump into a role and help them. And I come away from it saying, okay, give me tips. What did I do wrong? How do I get better at this? And they know. And so they know the kids that they work with so well, and I appreciate that. So Chloe Hoggett works with Deneen Holleran with kindergarten and first and second grade students. Rose Chilson, Jackie Roofer, Christine Hers all work in the autism program with our autism students, and then also other general education students as well. And then Jim Lascaris and Lola Slider work with third grade through fifth grade students. And like I said, they work so hard every single day, and I appreciate everything that they do. Thank you.
Tammy Endicott, Spring Hill Elementary School.
Good evening. I'm on Zoom as well. Thank you, Dr. Burke, for letting me take care of my family tonight. I have two groups that I would like to recognize. The first one I feel like never gets enough recognition, and that's some of our specialists. And I wrote them down tonight so I wouldn't forget anybody. Carly Robinson and Casey Valestra are our occupational therapists. Lisa Dooley and Terry Newkirk are our physical therapists. Julie Edwards is our speech and language teacher, and Amanda Foster, our school psychologist. These ladies are very professional. They know what they're doing. Their expertise is unmatched, and we could not do what we do without them. And they're always willing to step up and help with any child and any situation. And I really do appreciate these ladies. The other group that I wanted to recognize is, as we have been implementing Leader in Me, part of Leader in Me is implementing action teams in our buildings. And there's a leadership action team, an academic action team, and a culture action team. And this is designed for these teams and to lead the staff in making decisions for our school and making it and improving our school. And so it's really a bottom-up approach. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what these action team leaders are going to do with their teams, and our whole staff are going to do. But I wanted to recognize our coordinators, April Levitt and Amanda Phelps. And then our academic team leaders are Mary Chamberlain and Stephanie Brewster. Our leadership team leaders are Erin Kuchar and Rianne Hohendorf. And our culture team leaders are Kelsey Prell and Bridget Costello. I put her name down twice, Rianne's name down twice, and Bridget Costello. And all these ladies have really stepped up and taken leadership roles, and I really do appreciate what they're doing. They've already had several meetings, and they've brought some barriers to me for me to remove, and I just really appreciate their leadership.
Hey, Mika Bauer, Timber Sage.
Good evening. I have a few people to recognize from Timber Sage Elementary School this evening. First, I would like to recognize our best program team. Building Essential Skills Together, our elementary program that serves students with very specialized instructional needs in our district, is now at Timber Sage Elementary School. Miss Kara Standridge is the resource teacher who is in charge of that program. Her paraprofessionals who collaborate with her daily are Gabby Turner, Judy Brana, Carolyn Percelli, and Melanie Valenti, as well as our school psychologist, Ruth Sinan, our physical therapist, Terry Newkirk, our occupational therapist, Miss Lindsay Sisler, and our speech language pathologist, Miss Laura Rickaball, all work as a team to meet the needs of those kids every day. If I'm ever feeling a little bit down or like things aren't going well, I can slide over to our best room and watch Miss Kara with working with our students. And she truly was meant to work in that field. I tell her all the time that she was born for that position. So I want to recognize their efforts that they put into our students every day. I also wanted to recognize Mr. Gary Sutterby today. He is our lead custodian. I will tell you that Timber Sage Elementary School, if you haven't been there in a while, that place sparkles from the ceiling to the floor. I think that we probably have one of the cleanest facilities in Johnson County. Gary pays such attention to detail, and he is there literally every day to make sure that things are, in his mind, perfect for every one of our students and all of our staff. He's put in lots of extra hours sometimes when we may be a little bit short staff. And so I just wanted to give an extra special recognition to him tonight. Thank you.
Wolf Creek Elementary School, Beth Cooper.
Good evening. A couple of months ago, I visited with you just a little bit about all the work that our teachers do when they have to prepare for a long-term leave. And tonight, I want to talk a little bit about those special substitutes who fill in during that time. Those ladies in our building this winter, it happens to be ladies, they attend parent-teacher conferences, they do grading, they attend IEP and 504 meetings. We had a 504 meeting today that a long-term sub attended, and she had such insights into the child that she was able to share with the family and really showed what our substitute staff is capable of doing. They collaborate with teachers, do PLC work, all those things on behalf of another teacher who has to be gone for a while. And we've had 5 women this winter at Wolf Creek who have filled in for anywhere between 4 and 12 weeks. And so tonight, I just want to recognize Susan Walston, Claudia Chandler, Monica Wilson, Janet Votter, and Shonda Arnold for filling those roles that are not too easy to fill, and they're doing an amazing job.
And then Prairie Creek, Jody Cole.
Good evening. Great customer service is essential for any business to be successful. The same holds true for schools. The school's front office is a touch point when the student, parent, or staff member makes a decision about the school based on a single impression. This year, we hired Vanessa Voss as our lead secretary and Paige Nurnberg as our registrar. Their services go beyond briefly serving customers. Their interactions affect students' lives, helping them to become responsible while partnering, encouraging, and engaging their parents at the same time. This is not an easy task, and these ladies are doing a phenomenal job. I asked some of our students what they thought. Our students shared, Vanessa and Paige really care about us. They know our names. They're nice, kind, and always willing to help us with anything. Anytime I visit the office, it is always a happy place. Staff appreciate the positive and welcoming atmosphere Vanessa and Paige have created. They agree. Both are kind and compassionate towards everyone. Both are organized and efficient. They jump in and help anywhere help is needed, and they're always willing to go the extra mile. Some parents shared that Vanessa and Paige are both upbeat, positive, helpful, caring, resourceful, and always pleasant. They provide great communication, and they're the connectors of all things. Tonight, I'm proud to recognize Vanessa and Paige. They are genuine and remarkable. Their customer service attitude is essential to the success of our school and this district. Thanks.
Any other administrators? Cindy Jaldos, Special Services.
Good evening. I just wanted to take a minute to let you know that this week is School Social Worker Week. And so I wanted to take a minute to recognize those individuals who help us in that area, Larkin Fales, and then Amy Michael. They've done really great things this year. They've really been looking at processes and looking at what we're doing with some social emotional areas. So we appreciated their work in that area. So.
Anybody else? Turn it back over to you, Mr. Updike.
Very good, thank you. It's always good to hear about the recognitions. It's important to celebrate what folks do here. Business with individuals.
No cards were received.
All right, very good. Next item is the consent agenda, which consists of the approval of the consent agenda items, approval of the minutes of the special meeting from February 24th, approval of the minutes of the regular meeting from February 28th, minutes from the special meetings on February 28th, March 2nd, March 3rd, and March 4th, and personnel. Any questions or comments on the consent agenda?
Mr. President, I move for approval of the consent agenda. Second.
Let's move in second for approval of the consent agenda as read. Final comments. Katie, please collect the vote.
Mrs. Sealing?
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Updike?
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Melius?
Yes.
And Mr. Ewing?
Yes.
Approved.
Very good, thank you. Moving on to action item, the Board of Tax Appeals application. Dr. Burke.
Yeah, this is something that we kind of go through every year. I'm going to turn this over to Doug Swin. The reason I say it seems like we do it every year, when you're a growing district, you have this opportunity and this advantage that districts that are not growing do not have. So Doug, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, given the fact we're a growing district, unfortunately, there's not as much state aid attached to a growing district as there used to be. There used to be a new facility waiting that we would benefit from, and several years ago that got removed. So we have to look at other ways to kind of fill that gap because it's very expensive. The first couple of years you open a new facility and it's not at full capacity. So this is an option for us. I've put together the application and then what we do is we'll send that into the Board of Tax Appeals. It could take anywhere from several weeks to maybe even a couple months for them to process that. As far as I know, they've never turned down an application. It's kind of a formality. And then we have the ability to levy whatever we need to make the budget work. So we ask for a cap and then we can't go over that cap when we go to put the budget together. You'll see in the application, the amount we're requesting was $1,456,000 associated with the opening of Dayton Creek. And so attached several documents there. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to dive in and answer those for you.
Mr. Swin, could you kind of walk through what the requirements are?
The requirements to qualify, basically you have to be a growing district. There's a provision if you at least 6% growth over 3 consecutive years over a 6-year window. So, and that's the one we fall under for this particular application. The good news is we've had some years where we didn't quite hit it, but we did find a window over the last 3 where 3 strung together did meet that requirement. There's also another provision that if you gain, I think it's 1250 in a single year, which that was obviously designed for bigger districts than us. They got that put into the law way back when. And we're nowhere near meeting that criteria. And then there's one other one that I forgot that's in the statute itself. But ours is based on a 3-year period of growth that's equal to 6%.
Right, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Schwinn? Okay.
Mr. President, I move we approve the Board of Tax Appeals application.
Second the motion.
It's moved and seconded to approve the Board of Tax Appeals application as presented. Final questions or comments? Katie, please collect the vote.
Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Updike,
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Melius,
Yes.
Mr. Ewing,
Yes.
Mr. Mrs. Sealing. Approved.
Very good. Thank you. Moving on to discussion items. First discussion item is RSP presentation. Dr. Burke.
Yeah, Rob Swartz is coming up. Many of you know Rob. He's been with us for quite a few years. He is our demographer, and we'll turn it over to him. And you'll have to introduce who's with you.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you've been here, or you know, you're getting old when I just had my app come up for my sleep and it says, prepare for bed. Your ideal bedtime is between 8 and 9:15. Gosh, I'm going to be like my grandparents. We are here tonight and I have Jenna. She's going to do a lot of the presentation this evening. And I know you're very used to the work that we do. Jen is very experienced in this, and I thought it would be just really a good way for her to work with one of the fastest growing districts. So we can't save lives, we can't bring you more money, but we're going to tell you about more kids that should get you more money, right? So some of the typical things that we've talked about. We don't need to spend a lot of time on these first slides. I'm going to have Jenna talk you through some of the general things, and she's going to hand it back over to me with projections, and we'll talk about what that may mean for your district moving forward.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and we'll kind of skip through and try to get the main takeaways of how this mostly contributes to the projections when we get into that. So I'll try to focus on the things that are most influential with this and what you guys really want to focus on and think of it as this year-to-year update. We always kind of give the presentation in these 4 main parts. First, I'll go through your enrollment. We'll really look into your live birth and how that's changed with 2021 and then this year's school data. And then we'll get into all the growth and development that's happening. And then we'll get that into the projections and how that's going to come out for these next 5 and 10 years. So overall, we've got our 1,000-foot perspective. So we'll kind of dig into that later on. We always show a lot of different visuals. And so I'm sure you guys are familiar with your district, and this will be great to reference back and forth when we go into analysis and we look at different data by boundary. So we'll provide many visuals that you can come back to. So this is the district boundary and elementary attendance areas. We have the current middle school attendance areas and 23-24 when the new middle school comes online. Going into a graphic that shows how students are going throughout your system. So just kind of a feeder diagram to reference of if you reside in a certain elementary school, where do you go to middle school, and then how you meet up in high school. And then we add that in with the new middle school as well to show the difference in the feeder when or Forest Spring Middle School comes online. Going in, so this is something that you guys are probably familiar with. This is just our projection forecasting model. So this goes into the statistics and all of the different variables that we'll hit on that all leads into the projections. I'll spend a little bit more time on these next 2 slides. So these are going to be by county. So Miami and Johnson County will be the next slide of the live birth data. So we've been tracking this from the last 15 or so years, and we can see that consistent with other Kansas counties and just overall national and state trends, we are having declining live births. So we can see that the kindergarten percentage of live births in Miami County has been increasing. So although live births have been decreasing, the percentage of kindergartners have been increasing. So this is something to look at, that although live births are going down, you guys are going to have
larger kindergarten classes moving forward. But this is always something to look at. And we kind of use this as a statistics model to look at seeing what the kindergarten classes based off this year's live data, what that could look like. For Johnson County, as that makes up a higher percentage of your students, we're seeing here consistent also decreasing of live births with that 3-year average of 130 or so less live births per year. So this is pretty important when looking in the projection model of that you'll have to keep continually increasing that percentage. So trying to get more kindergartners out of the decreasing amount. So we can see that we started at 1.5% of Johnson County live births, and now we're up to 3% and above of Johnson County live births. This next graphic is going to be showing the past enrollment by grade. So showing for the past 20 years, what your enrollment looks like between each grade, and just looking at that overall total with this change. This next graphic is going to be showing that change of that cohort. So we can see the increases year by year of this almost 6% increase from the last 5 years of each year of 6.6% to 6.2. We can see that in 2019 to 2021, we had a lower increase of students. So we've seen this consistent with other school districts, that if you're growing, you grew at a smaller rate, or if you were more stagnant, you might have declined due to COVID and all these other different choices within the state and within other similar districts. So we declined or kind of had a slower growth of only 65 students in that cohort. But you can see in this current year, we went up to 272. And so that's like a full pandemic recovery. So we went back up to a similar 8% growth coming up from that 2% growth. So that's really good for the district of having that rebound of coming back and getting back on track with the growing district. This next visual is new, so I'll kind of spend some time on this too, because you haven't had this in previous reports. This is just going to be showing a comparison of migration. So showing from the last 3 years, what does it look like for students that are coming into the district and going out of the district? So are you a new student? You didn't attend last year and this year you are. So that would be an in-migration. And then out-migration was, I was a student last year and this year I transferred somewhere else. So you left the district. And kind of show what this looks like between elementary, middle, and high school, and then overall district trend to kind of see if you're gaining more new students or losing more students that were currently in your system. So we have these net totals down at the bottom. We see in 1920, we had a positive migration trend. In 2021, we had a negative migration trend. In 21-22, we had additional 204 migration trends. So that is when we talk about that pandemic recovery, we had a very high in-migration rate this year. This is going to be a similar map that's just going to be showing the areas of change in the district. So green being a decrease in students and orange being green being a decrease and orange being an increase. So we can see areas up north with some new subdivisions that we're having from the last 3 years, increase in students. I've already hit on that. We'll go into development and growth. So this first visual is just going to be showing a correlation, if it exists, between population, building, and student enrollment. So trying to show this relationship and how we phase it too. We can kind of see this graph is all over the place. So with different things like COVID and the economy, this isn't a direct correlation. So no worries on this. It's just kind of something to bench point ourselves. Next, we have our student yield rate. So this is going to be showing year by year what we look like with how many students per 100 single family homes. So saying when you have new developments coming online and you have X number of units, what can you look like of what you can expect for student enrollment? So we can see that we're overall increasing our yield rate. So with more units coming online, we're increasing the number of students. So this directly goes into why we're growing so much and why developers are continuing looking in the area. In 2004, we had a district yield rate of 25 students per 100 single family homes. And in 2021, we're at 28. So you can see that we're increasing there in single family. And with this, we had almost 2,500 single family homes built. So you can see that direct correlation too. These are great tools when looking at new developments coming online. You can kind of track by elementary attendance area of what we're looking like for new developments and new homes. We provide the same statistic by multifamily. So this is showing for students that come from multifamily households, what are we looking at there? So there's more variety within these numbers as there's less multifamily housing stock in the area. So this fluctuates more. In 2004, we were at 12 students per 100 multifamily homes. And 2021, we're at 9 students per 100 multifamily homes. And you can see that difference between attendance area and just the differences of stock. And there was 425 multifamily units built in that 10-year compared to that 2,500. So there would be a higher yield rate of students from single family than multifamily.
I just have a quick question with that. So, because there's some pretty big apartment complexes kind of slated in the area. Does it matter what kind of price point those multifamily are by how many students they yield?
For as long as this yield rate analysis, not really. We're just kind of taking an overall average. When we put those in projection models, yes, we'll kind of look and see what the different market is. You want to speak on that?
Yeah, the key thing will be how many bedrooms they will. So the market rate will be higher if there's more bedrooms. So one of the things is those new apartment complexes are coming on. We try to dig into how many bedrooms. Will there be more 3 bedrooms or 2 bedrooms? Obviously, 3-bedroom units should attract families that potentially have school-age kids.
Right.
Good question.
So this next graphic is going to be showing the last 5 years of year built units to try to track where the new developments are coming online. So different color coding is showing at what year from the last 5 years of units. So in 2021, we had 202 units. And you can see those are going to be the red dots. This is a pretty tight visual, so always feel free to take these visuals and after this analysis, dig in deeper and see where these new units are being located. We show a distribution of year built to try to track overall the district of seeing where's the majority of our houses, when were they built, and these types of questions. So this visual is just going to be an overall distribution by year built. So we can see that 35% of total units were built from 2010 to 2019. So a very new district, which I'm sure you guys are all very aware of too, but it's kind of interesting to see this in a pie graph of just seeing that over 75% were built after 2000. Likewise, this graphic is going to be showing that activity trend. So we can see how many units per each decade was built and track and see what that looked like compared to the existing units. So we can kind of see that from 2000, 2009, that we had this 1,587 new units built that decade, which then goes into the existing units of 2010 and how many new units built were in that decade. So kind of tracking of where we saw this majority of growth and this exponential growth after 2000 of building permits. We always go into a lot of different visuals. That's going to be your current and expected growth. So this comes from conversations with the planners, conversations with developers, and just driving around, seeing where dirt's moving and where we kind of see new apartment complexes and new homes. So you have a lot of growth in your district. So we broke it up, I think, into like 3 maps of different areas. So feel free to dig into this more of just the different areas. We have this green being current, yellow being like a 5-year range, and purple being 10-year. So 5 maps actually. So all goes into this table here, which is very small print. So I apologize if we can't read it. I can barely read it on this screen. So this is just also tracking those units and those what we see as these potential units. So maybe it's based on acreage or conversations with planners of what we're looking at for units. So we have over 8,700 total potential units being developed right now. So when you think of that and going back to that yield rate analysis and these other price points of what we're looking at for student enrollment of really tracking into this projection model, we have over 3,000 being currently developed right now. So to be occupied within new families in the next couple of years and seeing that effect in students. And then you can see that it's not slowing down in our projections for 5 or 10 years either. So we're going to be monitoring this. This is always something that you want to keep track of with the economy and everything else, that it may slow down on building activity. So this is the current situation, and we're going to keep looking forward and seeing what this looks like for our projections. That's kind of already hit all that. And I think I'm gonna go ahead and turn it back over to Rob to dig into deep in these projections.
Okay, one of the things that I think it was Nels that asked this last year was having more detail with the developments. So you can kind of figure where is this happening and how does this relate to your existing elementary? So really kudos to, again, we're trying to adapt some of this to the way you as a board ask for different questions so you can feel comfortable when we talk about what the projections are, how good will they be with some of the things that are happening. We are concerned about several things. With development, we know that the cost to develop since August is up over 130%, right? So we read all of the different things. We're watching what's happening with the price for gas for a gallon. These are things that we may start to see some of the impacts of a slowdown in the number of units that could be built. So we have to watch that as we go into this new season. Right now, things still remain fairly optimistic in how we're looking at what that might mean for developments. If you drive around, you've probably seen, like I did today, just to see, is something emerging? We're still seeing a lot of construction equipment in some of these subdivisions. You see a lot of new roads that have been put in. So a lot of investment's been happening that's impacting what we think will happen with your enrollment over the next 5 and 10 years. So on this visual here, we show you where you've been, where you are, and where you will be going with all of the expectations we have with development and demographic trends. You can see it looks like we're just going up and up, right? A lot of that gets into when you go back to some of the visuals that are going to overcome some of the live birth, and that's the development. If we continue to develop at the rates that we are and have been over the last decade, we're bringing a lot of families in that may never have had their children born in Johnson County or Miami County. They're moving into your district because of some of the attractiveness of your programs and these new buildings, all the great things that you guys are very much aware of. So in this visual, the red and the pink represents the elementary, the blue represents the middle school grades, and then the green represents the high school grades. And right now we're at a little under 3,700 students. By the time we get out to 2031, 32, we have you almost at 5,900 kids. So you can imagine what almost a 70% increase in what our enrollment is from today out into a decade. As we break this down into each of the buildings, on the left-hand side, we've listed them and we have what their capacity is. And then as we look at the last 3 school years, we show the enrollment 3 different ways in this most recent school year. And let me explain that a little bit just to refresh you. So if we look at Dayton Creek, the middle row, purple font is reside. So we know where the kids' address is. So we know where they reside in relationship to the attendance boundary. So we have 238 students. The bottom row for every building, blue font, is attend. So based on the student data, we know the number of kids that are attending that building. And so in the case of Dayton Creek, we had 228. So if we just showed you those 2 numbers, you don't see the flow of kids. That would have said 10 students elected to go to one of the other buildings, either through student choice, transfers, whatever that might be. But the top row for every school is a subset of reside. So it's the green font, reside/attend. So these are the students that resided and attended that building. So we look at Dayton Creek, there were 208. And so they went from 238 to 208. And those 30 kids, they went to one of the other elementary buildings, but then they picked up 20 students from one of the other elementary buildings. So that's kind of the past in that most recent year. As we look at our projected enrollment by building for the next 5 years, you see the enrollment broken out by reside and attend. We always say follow the reside because this says this is where kids should ultimately go attend. We're trying to take into account that there may be programs or options with some of the households indicators of where they live that may make some fluctuations in what that enrollment is. The key thing in this is, if you remember, we've come to you with different redistrictings of what elementaries and most recently the middle school. And when you look at the shading, we only have shading in the next 5 years at Timber Sage when we get out to 26, 27. So again, with the amount of growth and the plans that we've put in place with Forest Spring coming online in 23, 24, with the elementary capacities, we finally should be at a point where we can have a moment where like, hey, let's just be happy with our boundaries and see how this plays out. But we shouldn't just rest on some of that. As you see in this next slide, we need to start planning for what do we do at the secondary, specifically the high school. The question that we've been able to continue to push off a little bit farther is how large do we let Spring Hill High School get? Do we start looking at something different that might be maybe a separate building? Maybe it's a CTE building. Maybe it's something, maybe it's another comprehensive high school. We're gonna have to start having some of these conversations so that we have the right capacity for the students at that particular level. I'm going to break down each of these graphics. So if we look at the elementary level, we have out to 2029, 2030, we put number 6. This would be when we need to have things in place. Historically, what we've done with your district is usually a year or 2 years before that capacity is needed. We've been trying to open that building. So that's how number 6 got put into 2029, 2030. Might be able to move it to 2030, 31. So again, a lot of our building is really good. We just have to manage what the boundaries are for the elementary buildings. We're bringing on in 23, 24, the 3rd middle school. So Forest Spring, when it comes online, you can see that all the way to 31, 32 and beyond, we should have available district-wide middle school capacity. We may have to start looking at some of the boundaries as we get out in the latter years of the projection. Remember, we only project by building out 5 years, so we can make some of those decisions. We don't need to for boundaries here over the next 5 years. Then when we get to that bottom graphic, we're showing that if you wanted to have a comprehensive high school with the way in which we've been planning for buildings to come online, that would be out in 2030, 31, that building would come online. Now, if we look at some of the districts where we are experiencing fast growth, just like yours, sometimes they wait a little bit longer. And some of that gets into things that we don't have at our disposal. And will they finally be at our disposal with some of the finances, with facility waiting? Some of that would influence how quickly we would have buildings come online. Other conversations that have occurred are the cost for buildings. I mentioned in the residential field, it's up over 130%. I know what you're experiencing with Forest Spring. There's probably been some challenges with getting some of the materials, some of the costs. Can't imagine you're any different than some of the other districts we're working with here in the region. But again, this is just generally that timeline. Some things could change based on budget, based on construction costs, and so on. So with that, we open up to questions. And before I do that, I did omit one of the things that's kind of nice about being here tonight. This is the last presentation that Dr. Burke has to hear from RSP. Finally, you're like, how long did it last? How many years? So again, we open up some questions that you may have, comments. If we have those answers, either Jenna or myself will answer them. But again, it's been just an honor to work with Dr. Burke and your team and make it a lot easier when we get to this point to presenting to you all.
How big of a factor overall in the districts that you work with is the declining birth rate?
I think in districts where we don't see the building activity, it's a very large factor. If we went to one of your adjacent districts that we presented to this evening as well, it's a very different outlook. They did not have the rebound or the continued growth that you experienced the last 2 years. So in that particular instance, it's pretty big because they have not seen the building activity. So the building activity is something that we can overcome some of the live birth data. we're still watching that. I mean, Jenna, she's one of these persons that fits in the category of, how many children will they have? And will they wait longer to have children? And so some of those things are what we're seeing with the millennials that could have an impact. But right now, we think with the building activity, we're going to probably overcome some of that.
So our in-migration counteracts the effect of a lower birth rate.
Absolutely. And the other thing that I want to throw out there that's good about your district, when you break down the value of your single family homes, we have a lot of options for new families to move into, not only with the age of the inventory and most of it being newer, as Jenna covered, but the value you can move in at entry level, move up level, and then even some higher end homes. And that's probably been a benefit of what we've experienced over the last 5 years, is having those opportunities for families to make those choices.
So you mentioned high school or elementary number 6 and 2930, that's opening, correct? That's the year it would open.
Correct.
And then it's a 14-month process to build a elementary school. And then backing into bond issues before that, so.
Almost a 2-year.
2-year bond issue process. So
2027-ish.
Yeah.
2026, the earliest, 2027.
The other thing that you probably need to look at is, do you do a bond issue in 27, 28 just for the elementary school? And then turn around in a year later, do one for the high school? Because either way, you're either going to have to build a new high school or you're going to have to build an addition. So either way, you got to do something for the high school. Something you might want to consider is maybe building the elementary earlier and then giving yourself a few years in between before you go to the bond for the addition or new high school, whatever that is. Trust me, nobody complains that the class sizes in elementaries are small or smaller.
Any other questions for Rob?
I want to say I've appreciated working with Rob for many years. When you talk to some other districts and we talk about having a demographer and then Rob specifically, the percentage of accuracy has just been amazing over year after year after year. And we have good data when we decide to go to a bond. And it's, I remember years ago, people would complain and say, well, you're not really growing that fast and you don't really have the proof. And now all of a sudden, not only do we have the proof, but we can tell you exactly where the growth is coming from and the projections. And so compliment Rob and his team that accuracy has been so phenomenal for so many years. And we've been able to make really good decisions and plan ahead. The one caveat I'm going to throw out is the one time that we didn't do exactly what Rob said. And he said, if you don't do it now, you're probably going to get in a bind in a couple of years. We actually got in a bind a couple of years later. So not just saying do everything Rob says, but it's pretty good data.
Just know I go to bed between 8 and 9:15. Don't call me before or after that.
Great. Any other questions? It's great data. Appreciate it. It's a lot to process.
Good
Thank
place
you.
to be.
It is a good place to be. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Moving on to bond construction update, Dr. Burke.
Speaking of bonds, Tim Meek's going to come and give you an update.
And good evening. We'll get going through them here. On the budget, there's been no changes since the last time when we updated the contingency balance. So we'll move on to the project update. Milestones, continuing with the masonry walls and the brick A lot of interior work is going on in the classroom wings there. Roofs continue to go on as well. We're getting ready in the next couple of weeks, by the end of the month, to install the majority of the HVAC equipment. Getting all the prep work, as you can see a bunch of work on the one picture there for the irrigation and stuff like that on the football field, so we can get the sod down and get a growing season on that to make sure it's all ready for the first days of school in a little over a year. Challenge successes on that site. Almost all of the interior people are working inside all of the MEP trades, but Bart's Electric has continued to do a tremendous job. They were a contractor that was kind of on our list of let's not have them back a couple of years ago, and they changed some management and came to us and wanted another chance. I think it was on this building. They performed well, and we said, okay, you can continue to bid, and they've kept the same foreman and same project team there for us as well. So they're performing great, really are doing a tremendous job. Classroom wings, they're all dried in. The only place is the little library area that we're waiting on the windows to come in to get that totally 100% dried in, but we're working both the classroom wings on each side of it. The weather has been a little bit of a delay, but it is February, March that we've been working in. So it's a challenge, but not an unexpected challenge. So the good thing is we're on time and everything with everything going on. We've still got quite a few weather days built in, so we really haven't pushed them hard through some of the winter weather. We haven't made them put up a bunch of temporary enclosures and stuff like that. Try to do a bunch of temporary heating in on the exterior. They don't really like to do it because it hurts their production, and I really don't like to have them do it because it costs me quite a little bit of money for all the temporary structures and the heating and stuff. So we've been able to just slow it down a little bit and take really good advantage of the days that have been good weather. Safety report. There has been one recordable, and I'll try to explain it a little different. You see, there's still no lost time accidents. Some of you may not understand the difference. A recordable is anytime somebody's hurt that requires medical attention. We had a roofer that had some minor burns. He looked into a tank that he shouldn't have looked into, and suffered enough that he went to the hospital and was kept overnight. He returned to work the next morning. They let him out, and he returned to work. So still no lost time accidents, but there was one recordable, and we wanted to let you know what it was. So 258 days lost time accident free. So
was it like a new employee or something? Maybe?
No, it's actually a fairly veteran employee, and luckily he was wearing his full PPE. He had his face shield on, his face, his glasses, and his sleeves and everything. Normally, in order to check the tank, and it's not the big heating tank that most people associate with it. It was one of the tanks they put on the roof to haul the stuff to. It was a windy day. The product's still almost 600 degrees. He opened up the top of it to see how full it was, and the wind blew in and actually caused it to flash a little bit. And so he was burned. Asked him how often that happens, and they said not very often, but it does happen. They're not supposed to look in it. They're supposed to take a stick and dip in there to see what it was, but he didn't have a stick right there by him, and made the choice to do it. 99% of the time you get by with it, but it's that one time you don't. Good. It's good that he wasn't seriously hurt, and that he was, like I said, he was an experienced guy, and he was wearing all of his PPE, so that saved him a lot of problems. Really, just a little bit around his ears got a little bit singed, and a little bit of a sunburn on his face where the heat came back around a little bit. So, but really lucky. Could have been serious if he'd also forgot to put his face shield down or anything like that. So just some more pictures there. I'll let you guys look at those as you get a chance. You can see the face of the brick there on the gym. on the one side of the gym. The gym is bricked on 3 sides. You can see the interiors are starting to go there as far as all of the studs are up and insulations on the outside walls.
Going to remind everybody, this opens 23-24 school year. I think what happens is some people drive by, they see the building go up and go, oh, it's going to be ready in the fall. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done on the inside of the building as well.
There's still a lot to be done on the outside,
Outside,
and
yep.
around the parking lots and everything else. None of that's in and all. By the time school starts, people might pull up and think, oh, this thing's really close, but there'll still be a lot of work going on the inside as well by then too. So
Tim, do you know offhand, we were just in Woodland Spring for a meeting. I know with elementaries, you kind of did one and then kind of tweaked for the next one. What kind of tweaks did you have to do for this design, or were there any?
there were a few. One of the ones was kind of simple. Most of your wrestling mats come and they're 41 feet. The wrestling room at Woodland Springs is 40 foot. So you can cut the mats down. It's not a problem and get them smaller, but why do that? And so we went ahead and we made it a 1 foot bigger just so we can put the standard wrestling mat in there and don't have to have a little bit smaller wrestling mat. We rearranged really back of house stuff some. When you look in the mechanical room, it's very, very crowded at Woodland Springs. If you want to replace a pump, you've got to get a lot of gear in there to raise it up. You can't get you can't even use an engine lift to get up and over because the boilers are in the way. It's a lot of manpower and handling. We've changed some things, changed some angle and direction just to make it so it's serviceable a little bit better. So those kind of things that you see when you get in there that look good on a flat piece of paper, but once you get them in there and they're going, you don't see them. And we had the opportunities to make some changes like that. So, but as far as the real classroom areas and stuff, really not very much change to it. So we changed a little bit of configuration of locker room doors just to make it harder for you to have a sight line into the locker room area. The ones at Woodland Springs are marginal, and so we wanted to clean that up a little bit more. So those very, very few and very minor.
Were we considering around the library, I think, some sort of glass wall?
There's one wall in the library that kind of makes it a classroom. What's the classroom area? They're going to put a glass wall across there. It doesn't completely close the classroom in, but it gives it on, really you have three sides of a classroom. The one to, not to the hallway side, but to the side of it is still open.
Yeah, so, I think that'll be great.
Yeah.
I think I asked you already, is it HVAC system? Is it a boiler with gas? I think you said boiler room.
It's a gas heat, and you've got your with VAV boxes around to it's all rooftop units, so you're putting in 55 to 60 degree air all the time and trying to bring that back, and then the heat will take it up to the rest of the way. If you're heating, if you're cooling, obviously you'll bring in cooler air than that to satisfy your cooling needs. So and you can also use that to dehumidify too. So if you're in a time where you have to do a little dehumidification, you can super cool the air, bring the temperature down a little lower, then raise it back up so you're not over cooling. It's not the most efficient thing, but sometimes you are willing to sacrifice efficiency if you need to make sure you get the humidity out of a building too. So have that availability with the VAV system. So
Were these the walls that we had to put the extra bracing on?
They were the one gym wall, the outside that you see that has the brick on and stuff. Yeah, that was one of them that had the extra bracing.
Are we past that point now?
Yeah, we are, because as soon as the roof went on and the roof, all the roof was tied in, all the bracing, all the structural steel was tied in. Once we went ahead and waited because it didn't cost us any more to wait a few more days until they got the decking on, and the decking was all welded down. It could have come off before that, but might as well have everything as tied in as we can have it. So, yeah. All right, other construction stuff that we've got going that we've been tracking, again, the solar panel project, and really no update on that. The one part we did have that we're waiting on, we thought we had a ship date this Thursday, but got notification that it's been pushed back another week or two. So we're still waiting on that ship date. At least they are giving us potential ship dates now, so that's way better than a potential ship date. At least means they're thinking about us. So yeah, so we were really hoping to have it this week so that we could do a shutdown next week when school's out and be able to tie things over, but it doesn't look like we're going to make that. So all right. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Tim.
List of maintenance items, Dr. Burke.
Yeah, I know at one of the last meetings, board asked for a list of maintenance items that, projects that we're going to do over the summer, and Kylie Delphia is here to tell us about those.
Good evening. Okay. First, I want to be clear that there may be some other additional summer items that come along. This is what we have so far. These are kind of the bigger items that we have. I also want to say that our maintenance department does a lot of little things. So like I said, these are some of the bigger items. So things like asphalt patch, concrete patch, our maintenance team does a lot of that stuff. So I'll start here at Early Childhood Center. This one's pretty simple. On the north and east side of the building, we're gonna replace some of the lighting with LED lighting, make it a little more brighter and energy efficient. So and feel free to stop me at any time if you have any questions. So and all the lighting up front was redone when we did all the construction inside. So it currently is all LED. So we want to just make that north and east side the same as the front and get everything the same. So
is that parking lot lighting also?
On the north and east side, it's just building lights only. There's two small little, I wouldn't call them parking lot lights, more lights up the sidewalk. So we'll make those LED as well. So
Parking lot lights on that.
the
Parking lot lights on the main parking where the rec uses, those are leased by from
Evergy.
Yep. So they're responsible for upgrading them.
Okay, Prairie Creek Elementary School. It currently does not have the sidewalks that come out of the pods to the playground sidewalk and to the sidewalk that goes out to the parking lot. So Wolf Creek, Timber Sage, Dayton Creek all have that sidewalk that comes out. We'd like to add these in and make everything the same throughout the district. So then also some site landscaping. I've met with the chief security officer at Johnson County Sheriff's Office for a couple years now. He comes out and takes a look at our buildings and gives us suggestions on things we can do. One of the things is the bushes out front of Prairie Creek are too tall, and it's just a good spot for an intruder to hide and kind of sit behind them bushes. So he suggests we cut those down actually and put something in a little bit smaller. So it's something else we'll be doing. And then additionally, this is on the parking lot for the teachers in the back of the school. There's some cracks and potholes we need to patch. This is something we can't do in-house. We have to contract that out. They use that hot tar, fill the cracks in. So all right, Spring Hill Elementary School. We'll be doing some interior lighting upgrades. Again, in some classrooms, we'll be putting in LED lighting, and then one of the pods, the kindergarten pod, we'll be putting in LED lighting there. Installing blinds on the large window in the library. It'll actually be a roller shade similar to these. It will not be blinds. We'll when they have meetings in there, the sun shines through. It's really hard to have a meeting similar to the high school. If you've ever been in the cafeteria and the blinds are up and in the morning, it's just blinding. So similar thing they're having an issue with here. And then also their books are fading out from the sun hitting on them all the time. So, and then classroom carpets, there's some carpets we want to get replaced in there. I think we're doing 5 classrooms this year that need some pretty, they've got stains and things we can't get out. So we'd like to upgrade that. And then the exterior wall sealant, we're gonna seal the exterior of the walls at the elementary school all the way around. For years and years and years, it's been an issue with water penetrating that block wall. Matter of fact, the first job I ever did, I'll never forget it. The first thing I did when I came here 15 years ago was I was scraping paint off the inside of the wall because the moisture would come through and peel the paint off. And not to say Tim's been doing, he's put the siloxane PD on there for years and years and years to do that, but this is a more permanent solution. I think it'll last a lot longer, so.
Is it some kind of spray you put on the whole block?
It is, it's a paint. It will match the brick color, so it's gonna hide those mortar joints, but it should look similar to what it looks like now, so. All right, Spring Hill High School. We'll be doing impact testing on the turf fields. It's something we're supposed to do. Some people say we're supposed to do it every 5 years. There's this debate on how often you're supposed to do it, and we haven't done it since it's been constructed. So we're gonna go ahead and get that done this year. We're also gonna be doing some the field maintenance on the artificial turf, which is the coconut. Yep, we'll be putting that in. Some baseball, softball field repairs. Be doing the infill material, tilling that in over the summer, and then doing some additional work on the sod lines and the warning track too, as well, adding some material in there. Mow strip guards, we're gonna put some of these up on the varsity and softball fields. It really just cuts down on maintenance. Really, when we're having to spray weed killer and trying to weed eat up against that, this makes it effortless. We don't really have to do much, put it in, and it's a done deal. So roof repairs. This is the shingled area on the baseball shed. It took hail damage, and I'll get to Wolf Creek down here at the bottom. It took hail damage as well. This was probably about a year ago. We had a hailstorm come through here and did hail damage on that roof and the roof at Woodland Spring. Just the shingled area, didn't do anything to the flat roofs or any other damage to report of. So exterior lighting upgrades at the front entrance walkway of the student parking lot. We had some complaints this year about it being awfully dark out there. As you're walking up to the front of the building, we have some bollard lighting. And also in the parking lot as well, we did a lighting study, and the bollards we picked out have a significant amount more light to shine. So we actually got one out there now. If you go out there, we did a test one just to see, you can see the difference between them. So we'll be doing that this year. And then also the parking lot lights as well. We'll be upgrading those. Now, not on the new side. Let me be clear, this is the old side that will be upgrading the parking lot lights. The new are all LED and adequate enough for what we have now, so. Okay, Spring Hill Middle School track replacement. We've got a few pictures here, kind of what it looked like. They've already went out there and patched it, so those have been taken care of, but of course that's upon the Board of Education approval. We're gonna replace the scoreboard. We're going to replace these row of chairs with just normal bleachers. the way they're attached to the concrete, they're attached to the riser and they're all breaking apart and falling off. So we actually had a patron fall off one of them. It just broke and fell. So upon further investigation, looking at it, they're just all gonna fall because of the way they're mounted to that concrete. So we just want to remove all those and put in normal bleachers. So. And then pole vault mat. Trevor Gertson reached out to me and said the pole vault mat is in pretty poor condition, so I'm gonna look at replacing that as well. Spring Hill Middle School continued. This is on the outside, this expansion joint repairs. This is on the outside of the gym walls. You can see it's just pulling apart there. And there's also, that's probably the worst one, but they're gonna go around the entire building, check all the expansion joints and repair them as needed. And then we have sidewalk curbing repairs. You can see in these 3 pictures here how it's all deteriorated. We're gonna get those all fixed. And then these islands, we wanna remove all the rock out of there and put in grass and make it similar to all of our other schools. We just got lots of issues with the rock falling out, kids picking it up, throwing it. Just a mess. We just want to clean it up. So Spring Hill Middle School continued here to the cafeteria window. We're going to get repairs made on that. If we get a wind-driven rain on that window, it will tend to leak a little bit. I had a couple companies come out, make some recommendations, and they basically want to remove all the existing ceiling, reseal it, work on the weep holes. They're plugged up, some things like that. So floor tile. The floor tile in the commons and some of the hallways, is you can see here, it's kind of chipping up. It may be kind of hard to see, but there's some hairline fractures in a lot of that tile. And this right here is kind of what we replaced. We didn't have the color that is there to replace it, so we just did this beige that we had in stock. So we'd like to, I'm looking at that now to get that all replaced. It'll probably be another discussion item because I'm assuming it's probably going to be over $20,000. So I'll probably be bringing that back to you. And then additionally, there's some restroom floors that are kind of faded. We'd like to get those re-epoxied as well. So. Last but not least, Wolf Creek Elementary School. And this, again, I alluded to this at Spring Hill High School, the same shingles, and you can see I'm pointing there at one. That's the damage that hailstorm did, and that's all over the roof there at Wolf Creek Elementary School in that shed at Spring Hill High School. So again, that is a insurance claim. I think our deductible, Doug, correct me if I'm wrong, is $25,000. Is that right? So we'll be looking at getting that replaced as well. So that is it. Any questions?
Looks like a busy summer.
It is not as busy as last year though. It was good, pretty busy. So
Hey, just curious, what became of the old stadium the old scoreboard from the high school? The one that we took down to put up the bigger one. That one wasn't very old.
I have no idea.
It was traded in. That was part of the deal.
Okay.
It was traded in when we upgraded. So, yeah, good deal.
Yeah. Curious if it's still around.
It might be somewhere.
Yeah, but it's not.
They might have put it on a bus and sent it on to Mexico or whatever with some of the other school furniture that sometimes they come up here in a bus to take down somewhere. So it's interesting where some of that stuff ends up.
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Kylie.
Thank you.
Public participation discussion, Dr. Burke.
Yeah, one of the things that's nice about being an old guy is you kind of remember way back when. I can tell you that in 1990, it was the spring of 1998. We really didn't have any kind of public participation program. Every once in a while, a person could come up and speak. There really weren't any rules. And then we had quite an incident based on band. And all of a sudden we had lots of people showing up, lots of board meetings. And then we put in a process for who could speak at the board meetings and how long and that sort of thing. At that time, when we put it in, a statement was made recently, like, why do we allow some people outside the district to speak? We didn't used to allow people outside the district. We have allowed elected officials who represent our district to speak, but we've not just opened it up and said, pretty much anybody can come in and speak. So with that being said, I make a recommendation that the following individuals be allowed to participate in public participation. Current students, current parents, current employees, patrons of the district. And so you say, well, what if there's a former student? Well, are they a patron of the district? Do they still live in the district? And then that would be a possibility. Business owners in the district, and then elected officials who directly represent the district. If it's somebody that's outside of that and the board really wants to hear from them, you could ask them to be part of a discussion item. But I waited, and I've sat on this a long time so that we wouldn't have, I was hoping for a time where we didn't have public participation. So it wasn't that I'm pointing out or picking on anybody, but this is pretty much how we've operated in the past, but we've not ever really written it down. So I'm throwing that out for discussion and see what your thoughts are.
Would this be something that, if we wanted to do this, would it be put in policy or more just procedural or?
It's more procedural. And to go back on the history, if you look at the card, one of the things on the card it says is, what is your address? And so when people come up, they're supposed to state their name and their address. And so, like I said, this isn't a new thing where we, we've allowed out of district people for a long time, but when we kind of changed that about 8 years ago, that's why I think some of it opened up where maybe some people were not part of the district that were speaking, but it's one of those deals that we never really put it into procedure. It's kind of how we've operated, but we've never really put it into procedure. So.
I'm trying to think of some cons to that, and nothing's coming to mind at the moment.
Well, the nice thing is there's always the flexibility to, if someone didn't meet that criteria, they're just a discussion item on that.
Right.
I mean, there's a pathway to that, but it takes some forethought as you develop the agenda.
I think the directly representing our district for elected officials, it gets a little bit gray area. I mean, for example, Shirley Allen isn't elected for this area of the Board of County Commissioners, but she does make decisions that directly affect our district, right? So
I would say somebody like that would fall into the criteria.
Okay.
I mean, it's like Jerry Moran, he represents pretty much the whole state, not necessarily our district, but I think if he came up and spoke, we would let him.
Right, okay.
So.
I mean, right, because obviously he impacts our district and with decisions made too.
The other thing I think you need to be careful about is you're going to have some pretty big elections coming up in a couple of years. And what you don't want it to be is all of a sudden a free point for someone to just come up and
The campaign speech.
campaign speak, pontificate, that sort of thing. And they may not have anything to do with our district whatsoever.
Filibuster.
So just some things
Yeah,
that,
I have two other thoughts. The address part, my personal opinion is that if they write it on the card, I'm personally fine if they don't actually physically say their address when they come up. Now that we are projecting this on YouTube and out into the world, and there have been people, I mean, our addresses are out there. There have been inappropriate things at our houses. I don't know that I would want to open up general public where people disagree with them to be broadcasting across our YouTube channel their personal address. Now, can people dig and find it? Probably, but I don't know that we would want, I wouldn't like to see that be a requirement that they start with their address, saying it projecting it onto our YouTube channel and out there into the world.
yeah, they wouldn't have to necessarily present it. I still think they need to write it in.
Yeah, sure.
Or at least answer a question.
Sure.
Are you a current parent? Because we still have some people, I hate to use the word grandfather in, but there's some people who still have children in the district who don't live in the district. That's getting smaller and smaller each year, but there's still a few of those people. So
Yeah.
I think one of the questions we could ask is, do you have children in the district or one of these other criteria? Are you a current employee? That sort of thing.
I think that's all very acceptable. Also, I mean, even if they don't fall under this list of criteria, it does not mean they can't contact us in some way. They can email us, call us, still outside of this. So.
So my question is, if we're limiting this and someone falls outside of this, but would still like to speak, what would the process look like to allow them to do that?
They would need to fill out a card and get it to Katie. And then Katie could, if they don't fit the criteria, Katie would basically get hold of me and then we would run it through the board president to see, do they fall under a discussion item? And, you know, what is the level of importance? Why are they wanting to come speak? What is it that they want to speak to us about? So we would give them a venue to at least ask.
And they would still be able to contact us through email if they didn't like that decision.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Should we bring it back as an action item? Sure. So let's bring this back as an action item on our next.
And we could just review
April.
the whole procedure.
Yeah, let's put the whole procedure out there. No. Okay. All right, I have items from Board of Education members for future meetings.
I have a request, and it actually will kind of fall under later when meetings we've attended as well. If we could add academic pathways and what we're considering at the high school, I would like to discuss that and make sure that's a board conversation.
What else?
And I guess I wanted to just get an update on the survey for food service offerings. Is that?
I think we're bringing it in April, right?
May.
Or May.
Yep.
We've got it on the
The
agenda.
survey has been sent out and
Maybe this
JC is prepared to come in and do a presentation and review the survey results with you guys in May.
What else? Now, board work calendar, Dr. Burke.
Yeah, March is actually pretty simplistic. Student plan update. I think in the last two presentations that you received from the schools, elementary schools have talked about strategic plan update. I know that Mr. Wilson gives those presentations a couple times a year as well. Future growth, you got to hear from RSP, so March is pretty light. Part of the reason that we only have one board meeting in March.
All right, very good. Committee reports.
I was able to attend the Wolf Creek Site Council meeting and my notes are in my other bag, but Christopher did a wonderful job of walking through the procedure for interviewing and selecting the new superintendent. He did a great job at that. And I will come back with the rest of my notes at the next meeting.
What are the committee reports? No others? Superintendent report, Dr. Burke.
Pass those out. Yeah, I've got 3 items I want to go through. They'll go pretty quickly. First of all, this is teaching and learning, textbook adoption discussion and action items, what's coming up. Typically, we do the training after selecting a resource. If you remember in the past, sometimes we didn't even get it to you until June or July, and that was really, really late. This year, it's a little late because we're piloting these resources. This is kind of a new way that we're doing things. We did do the training prior so that we could effectively implement the pilot. So with this being Dr. Smith's first year, and this is not on her, it's because of us. And so we piloted, we got a lot of things in place, and then we said, hey, here you go. And we dropped it in her lap. And so she's done a phenomenal job with that. But because of that, we're waiting a little bit of time. We want to gather more data before we bring that to you. In the future, we'll get them to you earlier than this year, but piloting is a method that we'll continue to use. So we're pretty excited about that. April 11th, early childhood social emotional learning. It'll be a discussion item. And so that'll be something that she'll present. April 25th, it'll be the middle school science. It'll be a discussion item. And then since it's the 2 weeks after that, it'll be the early childhood social emotional learning action item. And then on May 9th, the middle school science. So I wanted to kind of give you a kind of projection in the future of what's coming. And so we had talked about bringing it to you earlier, but again, we kind of dropped all this on her lap and she's done a great job with it. So it's a little later than what we'd like, but big part is we're piloting all of these right now. And we want to be able to give you some good data. So that's the first part. Second part, the dashboard, what we did is we kind of quit doing it for a couple weeks just to see if anybody would care. And we did have some parents that had, and I can never say this word, immunocompromised, that asked us if we would continue to do it. So we're doing that, but instead of doing it twice a week, I think if you look at the lowest projection, Christopher can tell you, we've had 6 district-wide. We would like to move that to once a week instead of twice a week. And then when the school year's over, we would just quit doing that. And then the last thing, and this is something that I want to make sure you get on your calendars, March 21st, the Johnson County superintendents are going to go and speak with the legislators. When I say Johnson County Supes, that's all 6 of us are going. And we would love to take board members if you would like to go. You don't have to decide tonight, but just get hold of Katie. We will take our own vehicle. So if you want to travel with us, or you can meet us there. There's some bills that we really need to visit with some legislators about. One of the biggest bills that I'm concerned about is open enrollment. And if you're a small district that's not growing, that's not a problem, but we're a fast growing district. We're trying to stay ahead of our own growth. And then if they just kind of open it up, it's going to be hard to, unless they put a lot of specific rules in it, and the bills that they have right now do not have specific rules. So we could be overcrowded in new buildings. And that's why we're projecting ahead of time. So there's a few bills that, sir. Oh, open enrollment basically means just that. A student can go to any school, and the way the bills are set up, anytime. So they could come.
There's space.
It says as long as there's space, but what is space?
Yeah.
And so to me, I don't know if it's a 90% capacity, if you have to go until you're 100%. The problem is, and what the timeline is. So think about us. We pick up a huge amount, as you saw the in and out. We pick up a lot of kids through the year. Matter of fact, I know one of the principals, I think one of the middle school principals picked up like 15 kids, Rod, does that sound right? 15 kids at semester. Wow. And so if we were at 100% capacity, then that means kids who are moving into our district now are in a overcrowded school. And so I'm not a big fan of open enrollment anyway, but if we're going to do it, there needs to be a lot more rules and regulations on it than either one of the current bills. So there's some things like that I think we just.
When is that?
What is the timing on the 21st?
It's March 21st. We would probably need to leave about at 9:30.
Okay.
And then we're taking them food, just like barbecue on the hill, those of you who've been that. And then hopefully they'll give us from 12 to 1 to speak. So if you need to drive on your own, and I believe it is room 147 South. So, but if you decide to go, let me know and we can make sure that you have all that information.
I plan to be there, but I probably will. I do have an earlier, like an 8 a.m. meeting here.
Okay.
So I would just meet you there.
Yeah, just make sure you guys let me know if you're gonna go. If nothing else, just to make sure that you guys get reimbursed for mileage.
Yep. We want to take care of you. That's all I have. That's my 3.
President Updike, I'm sorry, I did not add my notes. I was looking for my notes on my side council.
Oh, okay. Well,
Go
let's
back, I
back up to the
apologize.
committee.
Well, and mostly because I just want to start with a shout out to Mr. Williams and how great he is at communicating with the site council and just with the entire school. So how much I appreciate you. Thank you. The Bronco assistance, also known as in the past Bronco Hour. I know that we've had a lot of people ask questions about that, and a couple of you have even asked me when we were and it was approved finally after Dr. Burke and Mr. Williams and the students presented that. I think the students really helped. Not that you two didn't help. But I know that that is a big deal to our high school students and to the teachers. So I was really excited to hear their feedback and Mr. Williams' update on that. The other thing that I thought was, a couple other things were, all of it was interesting, but I already mentioned the academic pathways, and if we can have discussion on that. And what that means is kind of looking at, I don't know how to describe it other than to say like what Olathe does or what the other school does. It's kind of a targeted pathway towards kind of specializing in high school. So I just think that it will be really great for Mr. Williams and his team to really present that to the board, and we can all kind of understand. And so publicly people know what we're talking about. The other thing was the e-hall pass. Interesting idea. And it sounds like it's being used in Gardner and Basel and Olathe. But I did think that what an e-hall pass is basically an electronic way to track how many students are outside of their classroom, how long they're outside of the classroom, where they're at in the building, so that they can really collect data on that. My only concern was that was about if they would have to use their phone, then would they have to use a laptop? Like what does that look like? I thought the parents asked really great questions in the site council meeting too. So that's what I know they're working with Phil on that as well. So, and then March 9th is freshman night. So all of our incoming is this week, isn't it? Wednesday. Yeah. And then finally, I know they're working hard and we give a lot of grace for post-COVID and everything that's happened with COVID, and they're looking at their fail rate and I think that it's great how well Mark Williams is really tracking that and setting the goals for the percentage of people with kids with failing grades and how that is adding up. So I think we keep that on our list too, and really make sure that we are understanding where we're at from a board level at the high school too. So thank you, Mr. Williams. I apologize that we got out of order because I couldn't find my notes.
At least you remembered your notes.
All right, we do need an executive session.
Mr. President, I move that the board go into executive session for the purpose of discussing personnel matters of non-elected personnel to protect the privacy interests of an identifiable individual under coma. Those to be in this session includes Board of Education members. Right, that's it?
That's it.
Okay, we'll begin this executive session at 8:50. Is that okay?
8:50.
8:50, and return to the open meeting no later than 9:15.
Yeah, no later than 9:15. Move and second to move to executive session for the purpose of discussing personnel matters of non-elected personnel under coma. Katie, please collect the vote.
Mr. Updike,
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Milius,
Yes.
Mr. Ewing,
Yes.
Mrs. Sealing,
Yes.
and Mr. Hoffman.
Yes.
Approved.
Thank you.
Will everybody make sure that their microphones are off out here? Phil, maybe come back out here and shut this off and turn that on. So give us just a second. I think they're gonna go in there, but they're gonna take a bathroom break real quick. Yeah, because Phil is getting him moved in there right now. So he could be on, he won't be on Zoom, but he'll be on the phone. Or Zoom on.
We're back in session.
Back in session. Yeah.
Okay. Mr. President, I recommend that the board appoint Dr. Link Luttrell as superintendent with a contract beginning July 1st, 2022.
Second.
Oh, sorry.
It's moved and seconded to offer Dr. Link Luttrell contract, extending that for superintendent of USD 230 school district. Any questions or comments? Katie, please collect the vote.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Melius,
Yes.
Mr. Ewing,
Yes.
Mrs. Sealing,
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Updike.
Yes,
Approved.
we are adjourned.